works out, the situation is in terms of DNA. We had 3 people doing DNA typing for the laboratory. Myself as quality manager, I was still a full-time casework analyst at the laboratory when we had Bob Budgate as our director and I was the quality manager. In order to run DNA, you do need a DNA technical leader, and basically this is an individual that has a master's degree and has 2 years experience in a crime laboratory. Kylie Graham is our DNA technical leader. She was offered a position with BCI&I, and she has accepted. Everything is still pending, all the background information, all the background checks and that type of thing. So we have not received any type of finalized date at this point. However, the issues become more complicated. It's not a matter of when we say to mothball a section. The problem being is that we have an active DNA database at our laboratory. It's not like a section in regards to digital evidence. We suspended performing digital evidence. That meant we suspended it. Any future casework went to someone else and it was performed. The problem being now with DNA is the fact that we are continually getting DNA database hits in that system. Completely shutting down the system would result in us having to find ownership for those DNA profiles. And then we have what could possibly be legal issues in terms of the prosecutions of the cases, because now you have multiple parties that are involved in the case, and there are some types of evidence that cannot be reanalyzed. The evidence was consumed in the analysis process. So I would recommend that we may not have 3 people, although ideally I would love that. We still would consider, and I would want everyone to consider us allowing us, in the event that Kylie does officially leave, proceed with hiring a DNA technical leader, and we could function with a DNA technical leader and 1 other person. I would like that to be 3, but that's also on my wish list and depending on what our budget entails. So the idea of mothballing is really not, in my opinion, a realistic approach because of the avenues that are entailed in that. Also, BCI has a different evidence acceptance policy than our crime laboratory, which means there is some types of evidence that the existing agencies have been used to having processed, and that be one area in particular is that of what we call touch DNA. So the guy that took the rock and threw it through the window and proceeded with the B&E, we would actually do DNA typing on that rock to see if we can get a DNA profile. And we have gotten DNA profiles from rocks. That type of evidence, BCI in this scenario will not accept in the backlog scenario. What I have done, because we had some time constraints and all this has been up in the air, the Kansas County Crime Lab had access to a DNA backlog reduction grant, which we've participated in. The deadlines were very close in getting an application in, and since we were unsure where we stood, I worked out an arrangement with the Mansfield Police Department's laboratory, and we basically designated the funds to go to them. Our amount, which was a little over $60,000, was turned over to him, and he has agreed to run those cases, those backlog cases, which BCI would not. So we are trying to cover all of the agencies in regards to the backlog and all the types of evidence that we would submit. We agree that in terms of the backlog, it would be a help if we farmed out some of the backlog. However, we still want to be keeping the DNA in terms of addressing database hits, handling homicide cases for this county. But that is going to mean that we are going to need to hire a new DNA technical leader if that position opens. We can operate under a temporary system. I have been in contact with also a couple other people that have agreed that they would be our temporary off-site DNA technical leader for our interim period until we can address the issue. So there are avenues available to address keeping the DNA open and continuing to provide investigative information for the law enforcement community on the DNA profiles we currently have in the system, which right now is about 1,500. DNA profiles that we have locally
I
here.
guess two questions. When did this occur with regard to the $60,000 grant and the transfer to the Mansfield?
Actually, the grant, the application was due midnight on Monday, and so nothing was resolved. So our option was to let those funds just get turned back over to NIJ, or in this case, since we were potentially trying to deal with our backlog money and our backlog cases and what to do with them, I contacted the Mansfield Police Department, knowing that they had also done contract work for Columbus Police Department, as well as doing backlog cases for BCI&I, and asked if he had any limitations as far as the types of casework he would take. And so in that regard, he said he didn't. We either were losing the money or we were taking care of our backlog. So I chose to take care of our backlog. If I overstepped my bounds in that regard, I apologize, but it was either going to be lost or it was going to be used to help us in some way.
Well, a concern I have, and again, I don't know whether it was discussed with the safety director or not, or with...
No, it was not.
But that
totally
issue must have
took that
existed as of even last Thursday's meeting that they had that you attended, and I did not hear it discussed at that meeting.
I did not know. Personally, I did not know that the application was due on Monday until after Friday. So I knew I was in contact with the Mansfield Police Department.
Who did know? I mean,
Thursday.
I have to ask you some hard questions, but who did know?
Yes, Kylie Graham
know?
did know, but she did not make me aware of the fact that it was due on Monday. I had been in consultation with the Mansfield Police Laboratory Director, and at that time he said, "Do you realize, Michelle, the application is due on Monday?" And I said, "No, I did not. I will get back with you once I can figure out what's going on." So,
second question, I guess I would ask, getting off that subject, but again, I'm a little bit troubled by the absence, I guess, of administrative control over the data important issue, by the way.
mm-hmm.
The second one, though, how did we ever accrue a 300 to 400 day backlog in the DNA section when you already were fully funded and you had the full staff present? How did it happen with everybody there? And so therefore, how can we hope to go into the future and get out of this mess with having half the people?
What we had was, we had the backlogs. The backlogs weren't in play. The backlogs were there prior to 2012. We were making a proactive stance to use grant money to get new instrumentation and robotics to improve that and work on addressing our backlog. So that instrumentation we purchased, and we have the validation. We had again arranged for a DNA grant personnel to perform validations to get that equipment online. Of course, she was also taken by the state 3 months early, and so we are still in the stages of finalizing it. So we were making proactive steps to address the backlog, which we were aware of. We also had situations, unfortunately, where we had several children being born on maternity leave, and in this case, all the people in the DNA section happened to be females, and so we also had issues with not actually ever completely operating under full staff. And although as quality manager, I did carry a full caseload, however, I did get pulled away when it came to our accreditation and our audits. So even though we had the people, were we ever fully functional with 3 people? No, we weren't. But that section was making the steps to address the backlog issues with